Okay, now we're going to work a little bit more on this painting, and I'm going to start again at the top, working a little bit on the face. And I'm having a hard time seeing the way I have to set this up for the video camera, so I pulled this up on my iPad so that I could see it a little bit better. And you may have to do something similar so that you can see what you're working on. And let's see, my round goes to a nice thin point, so I'm going to go ahead and use that, and I'm just going to start at the top and work my way down. I still like having my little paper. There it is. I like having a tester paper because that enables me to see exactly what color that I have. And this color that I have here is a little bit too blue. Looks like in the meantime my colors have dried. I'm going to have to respray those. Okay, I want that to be a little bit more purpley than blue. A little bit too much. Combine those two there. There we go, that's a pretty neutral shade. Yeah, I got a little point there, but it's just not doing. Took a few strokes, didn't it? All right, and that is all that's on that hat. Okay, now I need to get some more darks in here. I'm not going to be able to get as much detail in what we're doing here as the original because of the size, but we can certainly put some things in there. When I start doing detail work, I notice that I have less ability to paint and speak, so sorry about that. You can see when I go over a place that I went over with another color, I get a little bit darker. And it does kind of look weird when I move back and I'm not looking at the details. It does kind of look like, what is that you're doing? But I'm just going to trust that if I follow along these steps that I will end up with something similar to the original artist. There's a lot of different strokes that come down this way. Remember, everything's going to be drying lighter. So as I do these, if they're not exactly what I want, it's okay because I've got more strokes to put over the top of that. it's hard to tell what's going on up here. I'm going to just try to get this eye shape in. It's amazing how tiny you can get and how small you can get with the same brush, isn't it? Now I just wiped my brush off because I have a little bit darker value to put there, so wiping that off allows me to paint with a little bit less value. Now I want something a bit darker. Pull some of those yellows in. Yep, it's got some reds in it too. This is still wet in some places, so I'm getting a little bit of wet on wet. You're not too worried about it. And you might be thinking, ah, that's too red, but remember everything dries lighter, so let's see what happens when it dries. So a little bit of red here by the ear. I think something oftentimes feels too much, especially if it's only in one spot. So because I'm putting this in other spots, it won't feel like it's too much. While I have this color, I'm going to let that dry up on the face, and I'm going to come down and put some color on the arm. And this part of the shade I didn't quite get down far enough, so I'm going to do that now. To me, it almost looks like this was done in several stages, so I'm not going to worry about doing it all in one stage. I'll just put a little bit on, come back and do a little bit more. Just glazed over the top of this. So sometimes I'm fine to talk while I work, and other times I just kind of concentrate. So I've got that wet, I washed that out, and I'm kind of scrubbing a little bit of that off there. Kind of a dark, it's a little bit of warmth to it right here. Gotta make that sleeve look like it's turning the corner. And I'll like to do the same here. You don't always use the same color. And in fact, it feels like it needs just a little bit of red in it. Funny thing is, when you use red for shadows, it gives it more life. Got a hard edge right here. This is a cast edge, or cast shadow from that sleeve. And then I've got a little bit of orange up in here. got some more to do down here on these shadows. Mix a little bit of green. Hope you can see that in there. It's got just a little bit of green in it. If I put that first and then I start painting with these other colors, it will slowly bleed into it and help kind of morph that color. Grab some of that green again. Over the top of this other color, it feels different, doesn't it? I want that not to be flesh tone and have it get mixed up with the flesh tones, so I've got to keep that in mind as I do these kinds of things. Let's see. You see now that even though I use the same puddle of paint because I've blended it with others, it's going to be just fine. Let's try. I need a little bit of blue right here to, I don't want to go dark there. Got to make sure I make that distinction. That was going a little bit dark, so let me get a different color. I want to go with color. Now I'm just going to look down below here and see if there's anything else that I want to add. Actually, let's put that in with the blue. A little bit too dark. No reason you can't use a color and then blot it out to get what you want. I am seeing that that's working pretty well. I feel like under here I need a little bit more of the value coming down. And that isn't completely white there. It white originally, but it's not really, so. Let's see. That looks like that's dry again. So now I need to mix up a nice dark brownish red. if you are looking at the same color with some different values, do the darker ones with the first few strokes from your brush, and then the lighter ones as your puddle kind of starts disappearing. I need a little bit of a red. I got a hair joining me there. Isn't that fun? We love that, don't we? Okay, so that color, when you're doing lips, you don't need red lips. You need flesh tone lips with a little bit more red in them. Does that make sense? If you look in the mirror and squint, your lips are, the edges between the color of your lips and then your cheeks almost disappear, so they're just a slightly darker value. And this will disappear here in a minute. I'm gonna get a little bit of red there, a little bit more red on the chin. Let's go back up here. There is some blue. And my original there. No, I can't seem to lift that puddle up very well. I'm going to drink some of it up with my towel. There we go. I want some of that blue right there too. If you can't drink it up with a thirsty brush, then drink it up with a thirsty towel. Well, I have blue and I know that's drying up there. I'm going to come down here and there's a little bit of blue here. I think I also am missing a major shadow there. See, I've got this down there. This should be grouped in with that. I think because earlier I couldn't see that far away, I was missing some things. Getting in a hurry and missing things. Right, I'm gonna let that rest for a minute. Well, I think, yeah, that's dry. I can put another layer on that. So, every layer should be different. If you're going to show the layers that you put on, then they can't all be the same. Some soft edges, some hard edges. Now some of this down here, there's almost an orange right here in the shadow. And some of this right here has got an orange in it. And it looks like the texture here has kind of overlapped, and so it's okay to do the lighter over the darker, and it just kind of bleeds into it just a little bit. Two, put it there. Kind of layering these shadows in a very similar way with the wet on wet there. Want to add just a little bit more texture, so I'm going to use my paper towel to add that. Alright, while I'm waiting for that face to dry and I'm in the background here, I'm going to take some of that brown and add just a little dimension and also repeat this color. I need to rinse that out. That's the color I want to use next. This is the same color, the same puddle, basically, that I'm using over the top of this other puddle, but because I already have that down once, it's going to just give me different layers and dimensions. Easy to lose track of what part is what in the when you're painting and your paint covers your pencil lines, so you have to keep putting that back in. Not as bad as in an oil painting, but you still have to keep putting that back in. Okay, that's still wet. We'll have to come back to that. So you can see when you're trying to do the little details how easy it is to get lost with things. And some of this I can actually see pencil lines. So if my pencil lines aren't coming through, I can come back and do that. To make sure that that shows up a little bit more pink here. I think I'm nearly done there. I feel like I need to come back and put another layer in this arm. And this one is actually a little bit lighter than some of those layers. I think I'm going to have to put two. That arm to turn there so it looks like it came around the corner. my background is not defining the arm very well on that side because I didn't get that color over to it. So to try to get that exact color again and weave that in is impossible. So I can do one of two things. Either define that with the arm, or I can come back when this arm is dry and redo part of my background, fade it off into nothing, and put more color down here. This color right here I'm not liking, so I think I may play with that background a bit. Alright, so I'm going to come back to the background over here. I also need to put a little bit more in the face, and I need to define this over here. So I am going to mix up a dark here. And I'm going to mix up two darks because on the edge there is a slightly lighter line there. And it's also hard to get your darks really dark with one stroke. So if I put this in all over everything, then I can come back in and get it darker with a second stroke. Just a little bit, hint of blue on that. I know it's going to dry lighter. And I'm having a hard time getting it straight, so I think I'm going to use my whole arm. There we go. Now I've got to get the shirt edge. Gotta keep this all, don't want that to dry up there. Keep it all one shape, so I'm going to make sure I come all the way down with it. And this color here and value does not necessarily need to be the same as what's on the bottom. It can get darker. So I know this is going to go over it anyway. Remember those edges, you got to define your objects by what you paint behind them. You define the foreground by how you paint the background. So sometimes you can paint that background first, and sometimes you paint it second. It looks to me like these pants here, a little bit of that line should be shown right there. So I'm going to lighten that and add a little bit of blue. Because that is showing in that line right there. And I'll show that to you when I do that second layer over the top. It'll be more apparent. Alright, I need to define this background. And I think, because I need more texture in this background, I think I may do some dry brush. So, with my little swatch here, I'm going to take some of my brown and mix it with this and see a little bit too brown. I want it to be a little bit more peach colored. So I'll grab some of this. That's a little bit better. I think I still want a little bit more red in that. And a little bit too much red. The good thing about having primary colors and a dark is it sure makes it easy to figure out which one you grab. You know which way to go. Okay, I want this to be a dry brush, so I've got to take some of that color off there. And right next to my arm, if it's not dry brush there, that's okay. So that's the first part I'm going to do, because if that doesn't look like dry brush there, I'm okay with that. See how you have to make it fit in the surroundings. So it doesn't feel like an anomaly. I think that looks a lot better. It gives it more texture. And because my brush still has some paint on it, but it's dry, I can vary that. I don't want this to be the same everywhere. But I don't want it to be just in one spot either. So I feel like that is helping the texture. Let's see if that helped that arm. Yep, that did help that arm. I need a little bit more dark in that arm. I'm adding some red to my brown. I think that's still in the frame. Let's get this, to get some values in there. You might be thinking you're watching a video with no sound sometimes, huh? It's almost like a pencil line over there, so I tried to do that little thin shape. See, what are we missing? We are missing the shadow of the glasses. It's not super dark, but it is defined. We've got shadow line coming here, and then that shadow glasses coming out. Break this up a little bit. I think that's looking a little bit closer. It's funny how just a few strokes will make a difference, don't you think? Make sure I got that neckline going around. And there's just a nice light little line right there that helps define that. All right. I think I'm ready for my super darks over here. I want this to be pretty milky and creamy if I'm going to get it dark. Whoa, hold on to the brush. It's a wild one today. dust my brush off so I don't get brown in my blue. This is why I keep all the little cut off ends. I like that. Just because it's dark doesn't mean it needs to be black. I seldom, if ever, want a black. It's just like a black hole. It just eats everything up. So I could do this with a bigger brush. I just already loaded this one, and I want to make sure that I have, I'm gonna follow this. See, my hand is staying still, but I'm rubbing it along the edge to get that straight line. Put a little bit more brown in it when I'm down here. You can see how that, it's nice to have some change, not have it all be the same. And then that was right here. So following that line down gives you that architectural detail there. Because I'm right-handed, sometimes I have to turn my brush and lean it to the left to get that by the tape. Okay, I like that it's blue and then it comes down into black. I'm gonna have a little bloom right there, but I don't mind that. And if I don't have the value that I want when this is dry, I can go over it again. But if I try to go over it now, it's too soon and it will just be a mess and the paper will feel overworked. This line up here feels a little bit too defined. Got the cat in the room. So what I'm going to do is I'm rinsing my brush and grabbing a clean paper towel. I'm going to kind of scrub that a little bit because I want texture to be here. I'm okay if it kind of rubs into other areas, but now it will feel a little bit more like it's worn or that it's just parts you can't see. I like that area there better now. Okay, I'm going to grab some brown. And I want a nice point. When I want a point, but I don't want too much paint, I can blot the belly of the brush right like this so that I still have my point that I made here in my well or on my palette, but I don't have a lot of paint behind it to like overtake everything. What I did there, I want to do here, only not with the same color. Repetition with variation. That's one of our keys. I feel like I want that defined just a little bit more. You see the same kind of colors I've used throughout. That's what unifies a painting. And I think I'm done with this. So the only other thing I might want to do is add some texture right here for this. So if I don't want to use that same color, I'll use this orangey color here. Just to weave that in. All right. So I think that's done. Now I'm going to do my last little looking over a bit. See if there's anything else I feel like I need to add. And you know, there's always one more thing, right? This is not receding. I don't have one arm going behind the other because of that white right there. also need that to go behind. I don't want to do it with the same color. See, that will start to look like it's outlined. I don't want that. Okay, that's looking better to me. I feel like I've got that part going. Oops, and I noticed. There's always one more thing you notice, right? Let's see. Right, now I know that this could be better. I know it could have more detail in it, just like the original does, but I'm not working with the same size. So taking what I learned from this and the way this person combined things and the way Jean lets her colors flow together, I can learn something from that that I can take into my own paintings that I'll work from originals. So the only thing I have left to do is let this dry, and then I have some mask that I put on there, and I'll rub that off. And it's done.